All right. Hey, what's up, kid?
How are you?
Nice to meet you. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for going
Got to
to.
make sure I look decent for your interview so I don't freak out any of your followers. All right. Oh, beautiful. I've never looked better, Chris. Jesus, I look fantastic. Get all those guys in there. All right. Hit me when you're ready. Let's
Okay.
go.
The first thing I can ask is, how'd you get into SAG?
SAG. Oh, that was like 89 or 90. And it was one of these weird stories. I don't know how many people you've talked to and how many weird stories you've gotten already. But mine was through an industrial film through a friend. So as you've probably heard, there's a lot of networking that's necessary in the whole entertainment industry. And the SAG thing is the catch-22. You can't get an agent, so you get a job. You can't get a job, so you get an agent. Can't get your SAG card, similar way. So I was in an improv group called the LA Connection way back when. And there was a woman in that named Connie. And she had some kind of day job in like the industrial side of things. And part of her world was producing training videos, industrial videos. So this is not the fun, sexy, glamorous comedy. There's nothing. It was some kind of pharmaceutical thing. And it was really, I remember being really, really hard because I had to learn a bunch of pharmaceutical and medical and scientific terms that I didn't know. But I was, clean cut, young white male guy. So they put me in a lab coat and I had to do some kind of pharmaceutical thing, but it was a contract through SAG. So I got Taft-Hartley through that because Connie basically had the power to say, well, we need this guy. We want this guy for whatever reason. So that was my SAG card, was an industrial film.
Okay. What about like your first like film or television credit?
Baywatch, my friend. Baywatch was my first official professional gig, and just as one of my first auditions as well. But if you even know the show, I mean, it's been down forever, but it's been syndication also. Baywatch was a bunch of hot people running around on the beach, and they had some kind of storylines to justify a bunch of hot people running around on the beach. That's all it was. And this particular episode, I felt like they just came up a minute short, and so they tagged on this scene at the end where David Hasselhoff was the lead dude, and he, at the beginning, the first scene of the episode, he saves a pregnant woman whose car goes over the cliff into the ocean, and then she gives birth as soon as he saves her on the sand. At the end of the episode, the grateful husband shows up out of nowhere. I did not mention the whole. There's 59 minutes that they have nothing to do with that pregnant lady anymore, nothing to do with the family of the husband, and I just show up. And so like, are you the guy that saved my wife? Hey, thank you so much. And just like a big goofy, grateful dad was my first professional job. But it was so great because I was in and out of there in like 5 or 6 hours. I got to go and play around the rest of that day. I got residuals for years off of that thing. I got to be with all the hot, cute people literally on the beach shooting for a couple of hours. It was the whole fantasy come true. I learned what breakfast burritos were, and that PAs would you like something in your trailer, Mr. Palermo? I was like, yes, I would. What is that? So it was such a cool experience, and it was a really, really cheesy show, but I loved it. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that you got to around that same time you were on like Closer and Damon and things like that too.
Yeah, there's a bunch of sitcoms in the 90s that I did guest stars on and stuff like that. So Baywatch was syndicated, so I don't know what network it was on. But the first network show I did was called Suddenly Susan. And I was an improv boy. I am an improv boy. And I've been teaching it and playing it for 30 years plus. So I was all comedy stuff, and everything I got auditioned for was all comedy stuff. And Suddenly Susan was a sitcom. It was all comedy stuff. But I booked a role where I was a paramedic, and I had like three lines. They were completely straight, and it was a little bit of drama. You can't really say, but I was wheeling the guy in, Judd Nelson. I was wheeling him in, and it's like he's got a subdural hematoma, blah 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 blah, some kind of medical nonsense. And not funny at all. It wasn't meant to be, but that was my first network gig. And then I did a bunch of little sitcom stuff. The original version of Will and Grace and Friends and Third Rock from the Sun, a bunch of stuff in the 90s and 2000s.
And is there like a single case throughout your career where you've gotten the most starstruck with who you've worked with, or do you not really get starstruck?
No, I totally get starstruck. I did a movie called Daddy Daycare with Eddie Murphy. And I'm a fan of Eddie Murphy. That was kind of neat to work with him. But I was more starstruck with Angelica Houston, who
Mm.
was the heavy in that. And I don't know. I just felt like she had been around longer. She's an older actor, but she'd been in some classic things, and I felt more nervous talking and working with her a little bit than with others. Richard Dreyfuss, I did a movie with him for a while, and I was really, really kind of keen. It's like, oh, you were in Jaws, man. What's that? You know, and you, as a fan of TV and film, I always want to talk to people and get the scoop. Like, what was that like? You were in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Like, all these ancient references you don't know, or you may know, because you're a fan also. But you also want to be professional. You don't want to be a fanboy in a moment of professionalism where you're doing a scene with these people. So I try to play it super cool, and then after we'd shot, I'd usually hit them up for a little bit of trivia, or like those kind of more personal connections and neat stuff that we're interested in. You must share that because you're interviewing people in the world, you know. So I want to know, what was that like? Yada yada yada. So starstruck, yeah, I definitely feel it a little bit. I met Eric Idle from Monty Python, and I was real starstruck with him. But that was a 60-second conversation in the lobby of a theater after the show. But I was like, oh my God, you're one of Monty Python, you know, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And then I was wondering too, if is there much of a highlight of your experience on that AIDA show?
80s show. Yeah, I think I did 3 of them, and I was paired up with another improviser guy. So I'm from the Groundlings, which is in LA, big improv comedy theater. And Second City is the even bigger improv comedy theater based out of Chicago, but they're in Toronto and LA and a couple places. So I was paired up with a guy named Joe Liss, who was more of a Second City improviser guy. And we were a couple of doofuses characters on that. And we did a couple, and it was great fun. And of course, everybody's hoping that it would become the new That 70s Show, and it would last for a while. And we would get, but we did a couple of them. I think it only lasted 1 season. But that Glenn Howerton guy was on it, and he went on and did, you know, the huge show on FX, which I'm blanking on right now. Always Something in Philadelphia.
Always Sunny, yeah.
Always Sunny, thank you. So, you know, I worked with Glenn for 2 seconds too. And a lot of these things, Chris, you know, you're on the set for a week. You talk to and chit chat and work with somebody who's on that show, that other episode. But then if you're a guest star, you go away and you may never see these people again. So it's not like you become real friends with everybody, but you get to work with so-and-so and these kind of things. So AIDA Show was really fun. It was just one of the many that you hope will go bigger, and you hope you'll be involved in it going on further. But this one didn't particularly. But the good stuff from that is, I can't remember who cast it, but they brought me back in for others. They cast other sitcoms, so they brought me in for other stuff. It might have been the same team that did Will and Grace or something. But anyway, yeah. So AIDA Show was super fun. I wish I'd gotten to know those guys better.
Mm-hmm. And has there been a case with on camera where you've had to get the like darkest emotional headspace for, or has it mostly been comedic stuff?
Ooh, boy, that went dark, Chris, man. All right, so this is you now with the black hair and the black and white shirts, all dark. No, for good or ill, I've not done too much on the dramatic side, which I would love to do. But because I was a comedy boy, that you get typecast pretty easily and quickly in Hollywood if you're lucky enough to get auditions at all. And particularly because of my Groundlings connection, I was sketch and improv comedy guy. So I get called in for a lot of comedy stuff. Occasionally I get to do some straight acting or some slightly dramatic stuff. I did a scene in The Social Network that was totally straight, and I loved, that was great, but it wasn't particularly dark. There was definitely something over the years that I did, an independent film. I don't know if it ever even got completed, but that was a darker moment. That character was more of a loner and a loser. And it was implied that I was the bad guy. I don't think I was at the end of it. That was a little bit dark, but no, most of my professional work has been pretty lighthearted. And even if I played a jerk of a character, or my whole career, Chris, is a goofy dad or an asshole in a suit. That's the entirety of my career. So I did a lot of assholes in suits, but it wasn't particularly dark or real.
Okay. And what's the story of how you got involved with the dubbing or voiceover then?
Nimoy, I'm good friends with my buddy Jeff Nimoy.
Yeah.
Is a name you must know because he's huge in that world. And we were in the LA Connection together, the same improv group I mentioned earlier. So we've been friends forever. He was a big voiceover artist in the dubbing world and a director. So he did a lot of that. And finally, he had been doing it for years, but he's very conscientious about casting the best talent for the project. So I was not a dubbing artist at all. So he didn't throw me work until finally there was something. He's like, you know what, this you could probably handle, Palermo. You know, so he cast me in something. I guess it was Data Squad, maybe Digimon Data Squad was the first thing I did for him, but I really don't remember. So yeah, that was super fun, and that's also it's a SAG contract, so I got to do that job because some of the dubbing stuff wasn't even union at some point, so I wasn't doing those. But so I did Digimon Data Squad, and it was a blast. You know, I got to turn into a monster at the end and go crazy. I was the bad guy. I was the heavy bad guy on that, and super fun to do that. I love it. But that was all through Jeff. So Nimoy cast me in that, and then I met some people at the voiceover studio, and they cast me in a couple of other things too. So I've done a little bit of the anime world.
Mm-hmm. Well, and considering your experience up until that point, did you take the dubbing easier, or was it still difficult for you to get used to?
It's a weird skill set. It's hard. It's challenging. I had done a little bit of live comedic dubbing at this place at the LA Connection. They had an ongoing series, like a monthly series, I think, where they would put up a really old cheesy sci-fi movie and then dub over it with new dialogue that was all ridiculous and campy and fun. And I had done that just once or twice, so I had an idea of what, you know, matching the lip sync was like, and, you know, how to best gauge your inflection and your rhythm to match as well as you could. You know, it's never perfect. It's an imperfect science because it's written in Japanese generally. So even if you can match that lip sync, it's a completely different language. It's not going to be precise. So I had done it once or twice, and I thought, well, that was good enough for a live midnight show. Everybody's drunk and having a good time. I didn't think I'd be necessarily good enough for the pros, or at least a couple of pro jobs that I did. But Jeff said, no, you could probably do it. And so I came in, and it's a learning process. You know, you have to flub it a few times and go, oh, okay, I get this. You know, get the beeps coming in, and you got to come immediately on that. And then learning all the jargon of dubbing world. You know, a lot of it is just an exertion or an expression or an effort. There was a lot of efforts, you know, so that's your character, all that kind of junk. But you've got to fill in with some kind of believable acting of this character is opening the can that's going to release the worm into the giant galactic bullshit. So all that stuff is super fun, and it takes a little work to get there. You know, it's a skill set.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would think that Ultraman would have been early on too.
Ultraman, well, it wasn't that early. It's probably like 5 years ago, and they're doing the second season now. Jeff asked me about it, but they're not recording yet. So hopefully I'll get to do that second season. But Ultraman was just a few years ago because the intellectual property has been around forever. I think that's like 50 years old. But the only one I was involved in was the most recent Japanese series that Netflix bought. You know, so I was like the boss in that one too. I'm always some kind of bossy, not quite heavy, but you don't know about me. So that was really fun. The only thing I don't like about dubbing is you generally do it solo. You don't get to work with others in the booth because it's got to be so specific and so quiet, and you can't have any overtalk. The engineer will lay all that magic together. So it's mostly a solo thing in the booth. You're working with an audio director and an engineer, but that's, you know, it's super fun and great, and you would love it. Everybody's an anime fan would love to do it. But that's the only thing I find missing is, like, I like to play with other people at the same time, and you can't. I've not had that experience of doing an anime dubbing.
Mm-hmm. And I would think that like the darkest character that you did was Towson in Bleach.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Okay, so you're asking about darkness earlier. I was thinking of only my on-camera stuff because most of my career is on camera. I've done a few, but yeah, is he the one with the bombs that's trying to kill everybody with lemon bombs?
That's in Bungo Stray Dogs.
Oh man, I've only done 4 of these things, but they all blend as it is, right? So I think there was a couple of murderous characters that I did, and it is dark, but to my mind, it's so separated from real life. So I never felt it was real. I never felt the deep emotion of wanting to kill people or anything like that. So in my mind, it never got that dark because it's such it's such a specific genre, and it's so heightened and so exaggerated. When you can turn into a giant bug and squash a world, it loses a lot of reality. So I didn't have any problem with doing any of the darkness of those kind of things. But yeah, Towson was definitely a character. I should have refreshed my own resume to see what you were going to ask me about, because I couldn't even tell you the character names. E-Day is, I think, an Ultraman. I think I was E-Day. Yeah. Anyway, I don't even remember. Yeah.
Well, because I know with Towson it was interesting because you were taking over the role from another actor.
Did I? I didn't even know that. So
Okay.
I mean, as an actor, mostly we're going to jump on whatever jobs come along. I mean, you might get to a point where you can turn stuff down, but rarely, and you want to do it. It's a fun gig. It's a world I want to be in. So almost anything that came up, if there was an opportunity for me to do it, if there was an offer to do it, I did it. But I may not know much of the backstory or anything. Like, I didn't know I was replacing somebody for that. And that was Bungo Stray Dogs?
Bleach.
Oh, that was Bleach. All right, great. And they all begin with B, and I can't keep them. Yeah, so super fun to do. But I'm not deeply enmeshed in the history of it. I'm sure you know a lot more about anime than I do.
Okay. Well, since you played Kaiji in Bungo Stray Dogs for a variety of different series, is there more of like a memory with this character?
No, just the general memory of how much fun it is to do those big characters. Because again, most of my career is, goofy dad or guy in a suit. I don't get to do big monstrous stuff and characters that are want to take over the world or want to kill this guy, chase that kid. And those are super, super fun to do because it's so heightened, because it's so exaggerated. But that's the genre. You have to buy into that and do it. And I love it. I totally enjoy doing all that stuff. It's really freeing. I'm a big fantasy geek. I love all that kind of junk. So it's fun to do. I just keep coming back to it's fun. It's really playful, but I don't remember too many specifics of them. If I haven't done it recently, it kind of goes into the file cabinet of the brain, and I don't remember too much specifics. But enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is do you remember what Tillson looked like?
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the character designs. Like, I would look at that and go, how does he see? Are those sunglasses or is that his eye? Is that a tattoo across it? A lot of it was, I'm coming from a place of, I don't even know what this is. But you don't have a lot of time, Chris. You'll go into the booth. They'll tell you the setup. I'll have read whatever they give me beforehand, so I get some concept of this. But then it's just get in and start laying stuff. It's like anything. There's a professionalism too, and their time is money, and they don't have time to really get into the backstory of all this stuff. It's just like hit it, go. But I definitely remember that character.
Okay. And this was going way back. I don't know if the credit was correct, but was it true that you were like a production staff assistant on Wheel of Fortune?
Oh yeah, much more than that. I was there that was my day job for 7 years, Chris. I was there. That was my first real job in LA. So 89 to 96, I was there forever. And the very first foot in the door job was just answering the phone 8 hours a day. And they had a contestant hotline, and people, all old ladies from all over the world, and they would call and say, how do I get on the show? And I did that for 8 hours a day, and it was really boring and crazy, but I only had to do that for a couple of months. And then I was the assistant to the producer for a couple of years. And then I was the prize coordinator. You've probably never spoken to a professional prize coordinator in your life because that job doesn't exist very much. But I did that for a couple of years. And at the end of my run there, I was the special events coordinator. So that was everything ancillary to the taping of the show. So merchandise, the website was brand new in 95, you know, they were just making websites for everything. Not everything had a website. So I was the guy that did the first Wheel of Fortune website. And then there was a big annual sweepstakes, home viewer sweepstakes, and they get like 15 million entries. It was a big deal. So for 3 years, that was a chunk of my year was coordinating and fulfilling the sweepstakes thing. So there was always, the grand prize was a couple of vehicles or something. And then the second or the first prize was a cruise. They had a promotional deal with Norwegian Cruise Lines. So I got to go on 3 different cruises over my career where I got to work on a cruise. So it was like, that was fantastic. And the only downside of that is it'd be 100 old ladies and their husbands say, "When's Vanna coming? I want to see Pat," you know, and I would be the in-between guy. But what a great gig, you know. So I loved it. It was, I was not on camera, obviously, and that was my preferred. That was my dream, was to be an on-camera actor. But it was still a weird little niche of entertainment industry, of TV production, you know, game show. I never thought in my life I would be involved with that, but it was great. And you know, there's definitely a part of me that thinks I should have just stayed at Wheel of Fortune, because it's still going. It's like the #1 syndicated show ever, you know. So it's like I could have been working there for 30 years and making $1 million, but I think you'd be pretty bored of doing the same thing over and over for that long, you know. But I loved it. I enjoyed that experience very, very much. And the whole time I was working there as the day job, I was doing everything theatrical at night. So improv classes, improv shows, teaching improv classes, doing shows at different theaters all around LA. Basically everything outside of day job was improv for me. And that led into the on-camera stuff.
Mm-hmm. And it did look like relatively early on too that you got to do some writing for like original animation, cartoons and stuff.
Yeah, that was super cool. And that again comes from connections. The very first one I did, I think, was Earthworm Jim, which was a video game that they turned into a series for a while. And the EP on that, executive producer, was a guy named Doug Langdale. Doug was another friend of mine from the LA connection, right? So all this goes back to the connection. But Doug and I had written sketches together. We did a sketch show together as a 2-man show. And so he knew my writing ability, but to that point, I had never written, produced, you know, cartoon or anything. But he gave me my first shot to write. I think it was just like an 11-minute episode of Earth. I might have done 2 Earthworm Jims. And then after that, because I had been professionally produced for a real animation house, I don't know if that was Disney or what, but I got hired at Warner Brothers for a couple of years to do a show called Hysteria, which was sadly not a great show, but it was a great job. I got to write cartoons for 2 years, man. And this is the same house that did Animaniacs and Freakazoid and Tiny Toon Adventures and great shows from just beyond my childhood. So I know this all predates you, but I was not a kid for those ones that I just mentioned. I was already like college and older, so I was aware of them, but I was too old for that to really be my childhood experience of this is my favorite show is Tiny Toons or whatever. But I knew all of them and I knew how good they were. Animaniacs was a great show. I went back and watched. I was like, oh, this is a fantastic show. So I got to work with one of the same producers from that gang. And I did, 2 years of writing that. And then I did 1 or 2 freelance more for Disney for Doug. Oh God, what was that called? It was a kid in San Diego. I can't remember. You're probably looking at my resume. What's the other writing thing I had on there? I did 2 more episodes of that. God damn it. And anyway, so I did write some professional cartoon stuff, animation stuff that got produced. And that was fantastic. I loved it.
That was The Weekenders?
The Weekenders. Thank you. Why did you hold out on me, Chris? The Weekenders. Yeah, it's exactly that. And that was another Langdale joint, right? So I did at least 2 freelance episodes of The Weekenders and the Earthworm Jim and then Hysteria and maybe 1 or 2 other tiny things. Sometimes when you're a writer, you'll get called in for punch-up work. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Basically, you just punching up the jokes, or you know, this bit of the story needs. It doesn't make sense that the sister comes out of, you know, and so they'll bring in a couple of writers. So I did days like that on some other shows. There's a new My Little Pony movie, either came out last year or is coming out soon. I did a day on that, you know, as a writer. It's just weird connections that come out of this entertainment world, but they're all super fun. And you would love to do them. Everybody who's a fan would love to do them. And it's incredibly hard to get into that world. You know, it's all connections, basically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And going back to on camera, I was considering I've talked to Dee Dee Pfeiffer as well. Is there much of a highlight of you being on For Your Love?
No, that was just another 1 week guest star. I remember Dee Dee Pfeiffer just because I, like everyone in the world, had a crush on her because she's just this attractive, funny girl. But no, we worked together for that week. For Your Love, I think I was like a reality show producer or something, and Dee Dee and her on-camera husband were, you know, they were stealing camera. They were stealing focus from other people on the reality show or whatever. So that was again another fun week of work, and I got residuals. I got to meet more people and directors and possibly work with other people. So all this is fantastic. But looking back on it 20 years later, whatever that was, I think I was pretty much a straight man within that world. So when you're a guest star on sitcoms, sometimes you get to be a funny, and sometimes you're just the straight man setting up the leads. And that was my role for a lot of these things. So I was the reality show producer within that show, just setting up the goofiness of the lead characters. So I worked with her a tiny bit for a while. I mean, I haven't seen that woman in forever. I'm sure she wouldn't remember me either. But yeah, it's always fun to work with different people, and you never know who you're going to make a relationship with, you know?
Mm-hmm. I know I touched on it earlier, but considering that, is there also not much of a story with Friends or Will and Grace, or?
No, those are a little bit bigger. So Friends, I was on the finale of the show. So the very last show of the last season of the last yada yada. And a bit of trivia, I was the last non-friend ever seen on that series, because it's Aniston is getting on the plane, and I'm the guy that's saying, going, you're going to get on the plane or not? You're going to leave Schwimmer or not? And so I'm the last guy, and then she walks down the gangplank, and then they just cut to the next two scenes are just the six leads. So I'm the very last guest ever to be seen on Friends. But that was fun because it was a huge week. It was their last. I mean, Friends was at that time was the biggest show, right? And all six of them were making so much money on it, and they were everything in pop culture. And every woman wanted to have that haircut, and it was she was. Jennifer was dating Brad Pitt at the time, or they were married, or whatever their story was. It was a huge celebrity week. So that taping was all filled with friends and family and industry. So there was a lot of agents and managers and producers and all the Warner Brothers executives, and it was a huge thing. And security was out the door. It was crazy security for that. So I got to be involved in that week, and it was neat. And the six leads were, ending this show that they had. Imagine the end of high school or whatever, you're ending your 4-year run, but it was nothing but a great 4-year run. High school has ups and downs. This was, we're getting paid $1 million a week to come in and make funny stuff. That had to be the greatest experience for those six people. So that was really cool. And I knew Kudrow a tiny bit. Lisa was also in the Groundlings sketch comedy group. But she predated me by a couple of years. So we were never in the same, in the company at the same time, but we had done a couple of improv shows together. It was like a guest alumni, Lisa Kudrow, and I would happen to be in that show. So I'd worked with Lisa once or twice, and then my scene was with Aniston and Schwimmer and Lisa. So she was super nice and welcoming, and they're in the middle of the biggest week of their lives at that point. So for any of them to take an extra couple of minutes and talk to the guest star people is really meaningful, so you remember that, because there's other shows I've done where you're just the guest star and you're not even there for a week. You're there for 2 days or whatever. You come in and you do your bit, everybody's nice and stuff, and then it's over and there's no real connection to it. So Lisa was so sweet to remember me and be extra nice to me on that week of that set. But yeah, big deal. That week was huge. And for the studio itself, they were finally shutting down this huge moneymaker and this huge pop culture icon thing. It was just a big deal. And Brad Pitt was at the taping, and so and this one, and Courtney Cox, whoever she was with at the time, a ton of celebrities at the taping, which is not normal either. So it was a big fun thing. And then another friend of mine from the Groundlings, a guy named Jim Rash, was also in that episode. So I got to hang out with Rash for a bit, and it was a really super fun week for me. And because it's syndication and it's a popular show, that's another one I get residuals on all the time. I think they go from $300, yay, to this is $1.20, yay. So it runs the gamut of that. But it's neat that it's continuing, and it's fun to have been a tiny, tiny, tiny part of such a big thing. So that was cool. Will and Grace was good because I loved Friends and Will and Grace. It's extra fun, Chris, when you get to work on a show that you actually like. Because Baywatch was a great experience for me, but I didn't really care about the show, So it's a bonus when you get to work on a show that you love. For example, the opposite is like I never got to do an episode of Game of Thrones or something, or The Office. I wanted to do The Office so badly, never even got to audition for those shows. So those would have been even more meaningful. Will and Grace and Friends were similar to that because I really liked those shows. And my scenes were mostly I think we're only with the boys, with Sean Hayes and Eric McCormick. Because that was my storyline. My character was in with them. So you meet everybody during the week. But if you're not in a scene with those actors, there's so much less interaction. So I barely dealt with Deborah Messing, but Megan was super funny. She was great, just in hanging out at the craft service table and the makeup room and the table reads and the rehearsals, yada, yada. But Sean Hayes and Eric McCormick both were Groundlings fans, and they would come see shows occasionally. So I ran into them at different times, and they were both so sweet to even remember who I was, having done. They had a billion guest stars on that, but they were really cool. And then I wound up doing another guest star with something on Eric with Eric. It's more of a drama kind of thing, but either way, those were really great jobs because it was a super fun week. And one of them was the Will and Grace with James Burrows, and he is a classic, iconic sitcom director, and he's done every sitcom ever, and he's won a billion Emmys and all the big ones. It goes back to James Burrows. Everybody tries to get him to direct the pilot every year because he knows sitcoms and he knows that structure. So I got to work with Jim on that and maybe one or two other things over the years. So that's a bonus. You get to meet the DP and the director and the producers, and if you do a good job, hopefully they'll remember you on their next show and say, yeah, you can hire Palermo, he's a pro, whatever. So those kind of benefits come out of being on the shows, and all that was really, really exciting, and it was a good payoff to be on the shows.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, based off what you said so far, that your experience with the industry and has kind of been mostly positive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm giving you the highlights, so I'm giving you all the positive stuff. You're asking me about it. What was your experience like on Friends? Well, it was fucking great. What do you expect? You have yet to ask me how many times I was rejected in audition. So let me offer you that as a little bit of counterbalance. I'm a Virgo. I'm a list freak. So I kept lists of every audition I went on for like 22 years or whatever. So anybody in your world that's a science geek and likes the data, I've got the data. I had a great run. For 20 years, I was a professional actor, and I'm so appreciative of that and so grateful. And I recognize the luck that goes in that, as well as hopefully I was somewhat talented. Hopefully I was good. But being a successful actor, even at my level, not a huge guy, but I made a living at it. I had booked less than 5% of all auditions ever. So another way to frame that is I failed at over 95% of every audition I went in on. And very often you don't get that side of it. Everybody knows it's hard. You got to deal with rejection. You got to put yourself out there, all that stuff. And people kind of get that in theory. But when you think about, I failed 95 out of 100 times to get the job on the audition that I wanted. And that's voiceover, features, television, all of it. That's you got to develop a lot of resiliency to really go after this career. And I did it, and I was happy to do it. I'm not complaining at all. But I always balance that with like, I'm so grateful that I had these moments of work that were good and they sustained me for a long time. But never forget all the hustle and all the rejection and all the mental toll that takes on you. You know, and it's just this constant questioning: am I good enough? Or like, oh, I think I was great there, but they cast a woman instead of a man. Or I was great, but they cast this guy instead of me. That's okay, whatever. I didn't fit the bill. You know, you can have some realistic confidence, and also you could be swamped in the anxiety of it all. And just learning how to navigate all of that, the business side of it, is a challenge, is tough, right? So I always like to share that, you know, over 95% failure rate, and still I was considered a working actor for 20 years. You know, a lot of people don't even get that. A lot of people don't even get the one day on Baywatch. So I appreciate everything I've gotten, and I also appreciate how hard it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is one thing I always like asking on camera actors. Has there been anything that you've auditioned for that you came really close to getting that was like a major iconic property?
Not really a major iconic, but there's been a couple that I was close to getting. There was a show that was on for 2 years called Carpoolers, and that came off of a show that was called, what was the other one? Sons and Daughters. Sons and Daughters was the title of it. That was only one season. The lead of that was a guy named Fred Goss. Fred went on, they gave him Carpoolers after that, basically because he had done well with Sons and Daughters. I was up to be the lead of Sons and Daughters. And, you know, you play that what if game. It's like, well, what if I got that? It was basically down to me. I have a couple of friends who were producers on it, and they were in the rooms when these decisions were being made. And they said it basically came down to me as being the lead. And then one of the network people said, well, Fred, what about you? Why don't you play the lead? And Fred said, yeah, of course I'm going to play the lead. So that job went away, and I was that close to it. Now, Sons and Daughters, nobody's heard of it, lasted 8 episodes or whatever, not seasons, episodes. But again, from that, Fred got into Carpool. That he did some more directing, and that leads to a lot more work in your desired field, kind of thing. So I was super close on that one. There was a game show on MTV called Win Ben Stein's Money that Jimmy Kimmel was the co-host of with Ben Stein for years, and maybe like 4 or 5 years or whatever. And then Jimmy blew up, and he was leaving, and they were replacing him with like the co-host guy. And I've done a fair share of hosty stuff, specifically game show host, but just like sort of entertainment hosty stuff. So I got to audition for that, and I made it through all the cuts, and it was down to me, Will Wheaton, and Jimmy's cousin Sal. I don't know if cousin Sal is also a Kimmel or not, but at the end of the day, they went with Sal, probably because of Jimmy's connection. I don't know, but then the show didn't last very much longer after that. I was super close to that, and I remember thinking I would have cast Will Wheaton. He's an icon in that world of young male demographic, fun sci-fi stuff. I thought Wheaton would be fantastic at it. I wanted the job more than him, but if I was going to cast anybody, I would cast Wheaton because he was a big name. But it came down, I don't know what made that final decision, but apparently I was very close to that one, and that would have been a neat kicking off point. So I was never close to anything that became iconic, but yeah, I do have those near miss stories where I was like, I was that close to a thing that probably would have led to more thing. Those stories are endless.
Well, there is a more like darker, dramatic movie credit that was a little while ago. Answers to Nothing.
Ooh, Answers to Nothing. Which one was that? Oh God, yeah. I know you're looking at my IMDb right now, and I remember that title. I don't know if that was the one with Gillian, rather. Answers to Nothing. Interesting. So that's more of an independent feature. I remember it was straight, and when I say straight acting, it means just not big, over the top, goofy comedy. That's just my designation of straight acting. You know, that's meaningless. But I remember it was not like a big, goofy comedy thing. But I don't remember who I played that. I did a couple of those independent features that were wonderful. And they were great to get that work and get that experience and work with other directors and other actors and all that stuff. But now I forget which one was that one, which one was this one. Answer is Nothing might have been where I was a writer in a comedy room, and there was a racial moment. There was an African-American writer, and there was a racial joke that I think my guy was pitching, and then it became this really big race moment. And this was 10 years ago. It was a little bit before so much awareness was brought to Hollywood about, you got to do better with diversity, man. You know, so this is a pretty edgy little thing. I believe that's movie back there. And I love doing them, Chris. You know, most actors are going to want to do a wide variety of stuff. And I'm the same as everybody. I would love to do dramatic stuff as well as big goofy comedy, but because of my trajectory and my world and my improv and Groundlings connection, I mostly did comedy stuff. So when I got to do the straight dramatic stuff, to me that was a big bonus. Shrink, there's one called Shrink. Did you see that on see if that's on my list? Kevin Spacey was the lead of that, but I didn't have a scene with Kevin Spacey. I had a really, really cool scene that was just really long walk and talk through this fantastic campus of a house in Malibu, and I was like the Hollywood producer that was, you know, on drugs, and it had this massive rave party, and I meet the guy at the valet at the driveway, whatever, and I walk him through this crazy party where there's naked people playing tennis in the court, and there's just people doing all kind of drugs and making out here and there, and I'm walking through with this giant vase of a drink. And then I pass this guy off to Jesse Plemons. He's a huge actor. He's fantastic. Breaking Bad and Friday Night Lights, I think, and all that stuff. He's great in everything. And that's another thing. Literally, in the scene, I just see Jesse's character, and I turn over. And the other guy, I can't remember his name. He's also a brilliant actor. I feel so bad. But I'm having the whole scene with this guy. And at the very end of my part of that scene, I just kind of hand this guy off to Plemons, who's walking the other way. So I got to meet Jesse. It's like, great, at the end of this, I'm going to show you. And then I never actually worked with him. I didn't ever have a scene with him. But anyway, that was a really cool movie, and that had some dark stuff in it. And I was, you know, recovering addict who's relapsed, and I had a bit more meat to that. But it's still, at the end of the day, that's like a 1-minute scene, maybe 90 seconds or something. But it's so much fun to do those because it's different from knock, knock, knock. I'm a crazy character. You know, I also did my fair share of Disney Channel and Nickelodeon shows where you're knock, knock, I'm the crazy guy, you know, so it's neat to get that balance.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to bring up, it's a series, but it's another more dramatic the arrangement.
The arrangement. Yeah, that was cool. Shot that in Vancouver. And I was a radio DJ interviewing the guy. And again, that's fairly straight. So radio DJ, that's a character that's got this hosty ability. Like, and you're probably picking up on me. I gesture a lot. I have a lot of energy. I can easily drop into a character such as that, where the occupation of a radio shock jock is engaging and in your face and a lot of energy and all that stuff. I think I do a pretty good job with those types of occupational characters. So that was really cool. And it was, you know, the guy was revealing that he was now directing the movie with the hot woman that was the blah, 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 blah. So that was a cool one too. All great experiences. This is a great nostalgia moment. You're just walking me through my resume. It's like, yeah, that was fun. That was awesome. I love it.
Well, it looked like the last credit that was up, it looked like it was another darker short film, She Fell.
She Fell is great, and that's a short film, very dark. Oh, so here we get into it. So this is produced by a couple of friends of mine, and Jeff Weaver and Patrick Fabian was the lead of that, or one of the leads of it. Short film where it's a horror film, and they want to use that short as a way of getting funding to possibly do the feature, right? And it's set in a hospital emergency room. And it's about abuse. The lead woman has been abused by her partner, her boyfriend, who is Patrick Fabian in this. And I'm just this weird character sitting in the ER and disconnected. I'm not very energetic. I'm not very engaging. I'm just sort of a weird, quiet guy in the waiting room of this emergency room, and, you know, making eye contact with the the abuser as well as the victim. And I threw some kind of little cryptic phrase, watch your back or so. I don't remember what it was, but then the spirit of victim vengeance shows up, and that's the horror side of this. And I like to think that I was like a messenger for bringing that spiritual vengeance person in. That was really cool. And it was just a short, I'm guessing that was maybe like 10 minutes or 12 minutes or so, but it was excellent. You always hope that, these things will get funded and they'll make a feature of it. I just hope that my friends get more success out of it, even if they don't make a feature out of that one, but that's a calling card. And you show that to investors and you show that to producers. And you say, this is what I can do. And this is great. And look at the tension and the drama and the horror that comes out of this thing. Give me a feature and I can apply all that to a bigger story. So I hope that for my friends, but that was really fun to do, because it was the absolute opposite of Goofy Dad.
Yeah. It looks like, was that like the main instance where you've done a horror piece?
Yeah, I think that was the only horror thing that I've ever done. And that's cool too, because I want to do every genre. I want to do everything. When Nimoy hired me to do anime for the first time, I was like, what? I'm doing a piece of anime. It's like, it's really cool. And then Disney Channel to do the kids shows and Nickelodeon to do the kids shows. Those are super fun too. It's goofy, it's heightened because your audience is 5 to 15 or whatever. And some of them, the audience I did was 5 to 10. So I mean, it's a different acting style. You've got to be a bit bigger and over the top to match that genre style, right? That's one of my favorite anecdotes. Going into audition for maybe Zeke and Luther or something. Oh God. iCarly, I didn't do iCarly, whatever. I was going into the room to audition, and the casting director, there's 4 or 5 actors waiting their turn, and then there's the producers in the room, and she's got her hand on the doorknob to open the door and bring me into the actual producers to do the audition to read. And right before she opens the door, she goes, and you can't be too big. Okay, everybody, this is Brian. So they want that style to be big and a bit over the top and heightened and exaggerated and all that stuff. Oh, Game Shakers, Game Changers or Game Shakers was a Nickelodeon series that lasted 2 or 3 years. I was in the pilot of that, and that might have been a recurring thing, but I was replaced on that one. So that was one that's like, I wish I'd have got to stick that one out for a bit longer. But yeah, I always love doing those kids shows, Nickelodeons and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
what was the one with the girl's name? It was not iCarly, but it was a girl's name one. Better Luck Charlie. Good Luck Charlie. Good Luck Charlie. That was why I did one of those, stuff like that. So these are all the kids shows from that era that I did several of those.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything else that's upcoming that you're part of that you can talk about, or?
No, things have been slowing down for me. I've actually moved out of LA, so I'm kind of transitioning out of the whole acting side of things. Okay. And I teach a ton of improv, and there's a slice of it that's specifically for comedy. So I teach for the Groundlings, and I teach for other groups that bring me in. So I'm still very involved in the improv comedy scene, but mostly as a teacher now. When I was still in LA, I performed every week at the Groundlings. I did a show on Wednesday nights called the Crazy Uncle Joe Show. That's up there somewhere. And I did that for 20 years, Chris, every Wednesday for 20 years. And I just sort of stepped down last summer when we moved out of there. But even prior to, Henry Danger was probably the last thing I did. I did an episode of Henry Danger. And then that spinoff, Danger Squad, I did like a little voiceover on that, Danger Force or whatever. I did a small voiceover on that one as my same character from Henry Danger. Those are probably the last 2 pro jobs I did, and that's a year and a half, 2 years ago. The pandemic, slammed everything to a halt for a while, and things slowly started coming back up. And then my career was just transitioning as I got older, and they're looking for different types and whatnot. So I kind of am transitioning out of the acting thing more into the teaching full time. So I teach a ton of comedy stuff, but I also teach improv as a methodology for communications. So I do a lot of communication training. I'm a consultant facilitator now. and I work with a lot of scientists. So here's my nerdy side hustle was teaching improv to scientists to help them be better communicators. Because people in that world trend toward, I'm generalizing, but they trend to be rational and logical and dispassionate and objective. And so they often speak that way. And so the audience doesn't connect with them. Mm-hmm. So I'll be brought into different big science organizations to help with presentation skills and communication skills. So I work with JPL, which is Jet Propulsion Labs. I work with the team. Two of the engineers on it sent the rover to Mars last year. It's like, what? Yeah. So I got to work with some of those people, men and women who are literal rocket scientists, and I'm doing bad improv games with them. It's fantastic, Chris. So I work with those kind of people. I work with National Park Services. I'm on contract over there. I work with a lot of their scientists. So the new passion is working with scientists and helping them be better communicators. But I don't think I have any acting stuff in the pipe.
Okay. Well, my final question is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy. I want it to be, Palermo was a good actor who also shared that skill set with as many other people as he could. And that skill set goes to theatrical performers and just human beings who need better people skills. All the improv stuff, I use it as just the exercise. It doesn't have to be funny at all. In comedy world, it's meant to be funny, but you can use all the improv training as a skill set. It's a people skills, it's soft skills. And I love sharing it. That's my biggest passion, is all the improv stuff. And I love sharing that with anybody that'll listen to it. So it's really beneficial for human. Do you ever have to interact with another human? Yes. Then you should take an improv class, because that's what it does. It helps you make eye contact and listen to understand more effectively and express yourself a little bit more clearly so that people understand you and you get what you want. It's not all this selflessness of putting the focus on the other person. That's a huge part of it, but it's also putting the focus on the other person so that you are more clear and you can potentially get what you want and yet get your message out. I love sharing that stuff. So my legacy would be a somewhat funny guy who shared a lot of improv.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that we got to do this.
I'm so happy that you asked, Chris. It was fun to talk to you.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it, but I actually did Jeff Nimoy a little while ago.
I didn't. I figured you had. I figured if you got to me, you must have gotten to Nimoy long before that. He's always busy. He's always got stuff going on. And I'm sure he told you about Famous, his movie, which is great. Really super fun. I was so proud of him, man. That's a great thing. But yeah, Nimoy's a good buddy of mine.
Is he the only anime VO person that you're friends with?
No, Mike Greco. So Greco does a lot of voiceover. I think less. He's definitely done some anime and some animation, but I think he does a lot more straight commercial work. So, but Greco is another one of my best friends in the whole world, and we all met at the LA Connection at an improv group. Improv is everything, Chris. That's the bottom line of this episode is improv is everything. Go take an improv class. You'll meet good people. You'll learn good skills. So Greco, I'm super close with, and there's a few of my Groundlings buddies who definitely do voiceover work as well. But I don't know who's doing what. Right now, Nat Faxon is Captain Underpants, and I've got two boys, and we watch Captain Underpants. We binge it. It's a really fun little show. It may be too young for you, but Faxon is the lead of that, and he does a great job with that. And that's another thing of Groundlings specifically. Now, improv, but Groundlings is character based. You do big character stuff. So alumni Will Ferrell, Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph, all these big comedy people, but the skill set you learn at Groundlings is all how to do comedic characters, and that translates really well to animation. So a few of my Groundlings buddies do that kind of stuff. Phil Lamar is huge. I should have dropped Phil. He should have been the first name I should have dropped. Phil. He does every animated series ever, and Lamar's been doing that for 30 years. So he's probably my biggest animation voiceover buddy is Phil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'll be sure to send it to you once I have it up.
I'd love it. I'd love to see it. And I'll share it in my stuff too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, man. Hey, it was great talking to you, Chris.
Yeah, you too.
Have a good one.